Welcome back, and welcome to this Adventure in Italian Opera with Fred Plotkin. As you know, it's the most successful and longest-lasting series that we have here at Casa Italiana, and it's always a great pleasure to listen to Fred in participation, conversation with his guests, engaging conversations, and we always say that it's a sort of an ongoing university course on opera that Fred is co-teaching with his guests as they come to visit here at Casa Italiana. As usual, I don't tell you about the guest that Fred has tonight, because I leave that honor to him, and I'm just going to pronounce her name, hopefully correctly, when I call them to the stage. And Fred, you know everything about him by now. And every time I tell you that I want to emphasize one thing. So now there is a thing for which we should all be proud and celebrating. Fred's last book, there is Rick Steves' Italy for Food Lovers, co-written with Fred Plotkin, is number 3 in the Amazon best-selling list. So it's great news. That's a facet of Fred that we have not quite experienced as we should here at the Casa. But as you know, he's an authority also on food and wine, and not only Italian food and wine. So we are very happy for him. You can find the book everywhere you want, and we are talking with Fred about having a presentation of the food side of Fred here, either this semester or at the beginning of the next one in the fall. And now, without further ado, I would like to ask you to please welcome for this evening Fred Plotkin and Ekaterina Gubanova. Thank you.
So, good evening, good afternoon, buonasera if you're listening in Italy. Good morning if you're listening in California. I always look forward to these nights because in many cases I bring people to you that you may not have seen and heard. For example, we had a young maestro recently, Michele Gamba, and if you saw that, you saw how outstanding he was. And tonight's artist is someone that I have followed for a long time as an artist. We have occasionally texted and emailed through the years, but this is really the first time we're sitting down together. Ekaterina Gubanova, I will put it in the simplest terms, is one of the leading mezzo-sopranos in the world with a range of repertory, of style, of characterization, of an artistry that I think is outstanding, because otherwise I would not have asked her to come here. So rather than list everything that she's done, we'll talk about some of the things she's done, and we'll see and hear some of the music that she has performed. So please welcome. You don't have to sing tonight, but please welcome Ekaterina Gubanova. Now, by the way, we know we can hear you, but this is recording right, so that we're streaming.
Right.
In doing my research today, I mean, I know I've seen everything she's done at the Met, and I thought to myself, she sang opening night this season, and I think I've seen her before on opening nights, because, you know, it's a big deal at the Metropolitan Opera, and by the way, thanks to the Met for allowing Ekaterina to come here tonight. It's a big deal to be asked to sing in one opening night at the Met. You've sung in 3.
I know.
And there are many artists who go their whole careers not singing one opening night at the Met. You've sung in 3. In 2011, you were Giovanna Seymour in Anna Bolena. You were Brangena in Tristan and Isolde in 2016. And you were Neres in Medea by Cherubini in the Met premiere of Medea. And we had Carlo Rizzi, the conductor, here at the beginning of the season. And so already we have you singing in Belcanto, in Uber Wagner, and in the singular work of Luigi Cherubini, who's a composer who scarcely is known at the Met. I said this before when Maestro Rizzi was here, that I and many people are always asked, if you could have one opera at the Met that's never been at the Met, what would it be? And I've always answered Medea for about 20 years. And I'm glad that they presented it, and I'm glad that you were in it. And Sandra Radvanovsky sang Medea, and you played, in effect, the servant but confidant, the only person Medea had left. And what I find interesting this season, right now, Ekaterina is singing Adalgisa in Norma. And right now, as in you should go hear her right now, because she's fabulous and the cast is fabulous. But it's interesting that both roles this season, it's sort of the same character with differences in that you have a faithful, kind mezzo-soprano serving a crazy soprano who wants to kill her children.
That's also Tristan.
But in this case, both these women want to kill their children, and one does. Medea. Norma says, "Okay, you take them out, Adalgisa," but basically, these are two very crazy women or determined women, and your characters provide the foundation, the rock, the security. And it's in I think, in your music as well as in the personality. Would you talk about experiencing these two characters this season together at the Met?
Well, even if the characters seem quite similar in the same line, but for...
A little close to the mic.
One.
Got it. Well, we
I'm
don't
just
say
going to
Vicky
move
Vici,
closer.
Susie.
Yep. Even that the these characters seem similar. For me, the difference comes from the soprano who is doing the part, because I think doing the supporting role, and in all terms supporting, it means secondary, but it also means to support. And the sopranos in these crazy roles, they need support. They need someone who will not. It's only my opinion. Someone who will actually help and be there for them musically and personally, and as a colleague also. Someone who will not pull the blanket towards herself, for example. So when I arrive to do a production like this, I base my character on the soprano who I'm dealing with. What does she need from me? And I think this creates, when they feel, and I do it absolutely sincerely, because I want things to work. It's a teamwork, the show. We're putting on the show, we want it to work. And in order for it to work, we need to be all close together and be together. So I think this approach helps me to establish the real chemistry between the characters, and to really for the relationship between these characters to become authentic and believable. So and I really enjoy doing this rehearsal. After the rehearsal, adjusting, being a little bit chameleon-like, but always sincerely, and that gives me great joy when people say that they worked great together. We could feel that they have feelings, and voilà. So
Yeah, I agree with you. And I watched a lot of video of you for the past few days. You've been the woman in my life, basically, for the past few days. And I've enjoyed that, I will confess. And one thing I've noticed among many is that all the video I've watched of you, and I've seen this on the stage too, you are one of the best listeners in opera. And by that I mean that you don't, for example, anticipate what the other singer is going to say because you know the score, but you're listening as if for the first time. So when Medea or Norma or Isolde says something to you, your response on the stage is one of hearing and responding to what they've just said. And that's not easy. A lot of singers don't bother to do that, frankly. They know their part, and someone sings this, and then the other one sings that, and then she'll look that way. You don't do that. You respond to what they're saying, sometimes physically, sometimes your body will rear back as if you're taking in information that is upsetting, surprising, pleasing, whatever. And so therefore, your acting is not, quote, acting. It's responding. And it's responding through listening. And that's a great gift. And when people say opera is not natural theater, sometimes it's not. But it can be to the degree that you react to everyone around you. And I'm guessing that part of that comes from your musical education, that I know about you that you studied choral conducting, you studied piano, you, like Placido Domingo, learn your scores yourself at your own piano, and most singers go to coaches, and therefore your relationship to the music is that you're not just looking at the mezzo-soprano line on the score, you're looking at the entire score.
Everything, yes.
And that comes very clear to me, because at first, the first time I saw you, I thought, she's really good, I like her voice. Why am I responding particularly to this artist, sometimes in a smaller role, rather than the star? And it took several years of watching you to come to understand that. So that's why you're here tonight, because your performances always completely engage me, and whatever it is. So I want to point out right away is that many artists that we meet do the Italian repertory, they might do a part of the Italian repertory, or they might do the Germanic repertory. With one exception in my research, you sing an incredibly wide range of music. And the one exception, maybe you did early in your career, is Mozart, that I've not seen much Mozart.
Yeah.
I know you sang in Salzburg, The Third Lady, because I heard it in the Magic Flute. But Muti conducting? Yeah.
Yes.
But I don't remember you and Mozart. Is there a reason for that? No one's asked.
Yes, the thing is that I had this. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for appreciating this little acting tool. That whenever it's hard work to really, repeating same character, same show all over again, and still keep it fresh. It's a lot of work, and I've been always wondering, do people notice? So I'm so happy.
Good.
Well, yes, and for Mozart, the thing is that I know that Mozart is so good for the voice, but unfortunately, I was from the very start. My voice had this quality that no one has ever thought of asking me to sing Dorabella. Like I heard comments like, if we ask you to sing Dorabella, who is going to be Fiordiligi? Who are we going to ask for other roles? So it's
Is that
the balancing
mezzoitis? Is that basically that they cast the soprano and then they get the mezzo? Unless it's Carmen or something like that.
I imagine maybe my voice is too heavy, sounding too, I don't know, the wrong color for this. I've also done some Mozart requiems, but at a very, very early stage of my career. And there was a tour of Mozart requiems in Finland was my first ever paid job offer. That I was filling out the application form in McDonald's to start working as a waitress there. I was desperate. Money was finished. And next morning I received the call for these requiems that 4 or 5 concerts that paid for everything, my dorm, all the food, everything. So that was
So
amazing.
did you ever work at McDonald's?
No, I've never actually. I have never worked.
I have for
apart
9
from
months.
singing. No.
I began my cooking career at McDonald's.
Wow!
I
Look
worked
where
for
you are now.
In Madison, Wisconsin. I was a very well-known chef there locally because I didn't like, and we have the wonderful Mary Nessel here tonight who can tell us everything about McDonald's nutrition, but I didn't like McDonald's formulas for special sauce and how they prepared their burgers and the meats and so on. So I basically prepared my version of this stuff, and word got out that the Big Macs are much better at 441 Lake Street than they are at the other McDonald's. And the grilled cheese and everything, just the eggs are better there. But yes, for 9 months I paid for my education at McDonald's.
Yeah,
So
I was
have
about to do that.
Yeah,
That
you could have.
never came.
serving reindeer steaks in Helsinki. Anyway, I think that I would love to hear you in Mozart, and there's a reason for that, is that I'm asked, as you can imagine, all the time, when I talk about a younger artist, people always say to me, who is she like? Who would you compare her to? And it took me a while to figure out who I would compare you to because of the Mozart thing. Because the artist that I compare you to did a lot of Mozart in her career, and you haven't. And she was a wonderful Dorabella, but she was also an Ortrud and a Kundry and a Leonora in Fidelio, which I think you can do if you chose to do that. And she sang Eboli and Amneris and all the Wagner roles and all the Verdi roles. And my first Carmen was this artist, her Carmen was in German, was Christa Ludwig.
She's my idol.
Is she really? Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense to me. If you're familiar or not with Christa Ludwig, her birthday would have been the other day. I think she would have been 95 or 96. Christa Ludwig was born in 1928, so we can figure that out. And she was born in Berlin, and she was born at a time when she was younger than all the people who had been through World War I, but was old enough at the end of World War II to sing roles where she was just ready to sing them. So by 1946, when German and Austrian and French and British and American opera houses were reopening and artists were coming, Christa Ludwig was the right age, the right personality, the right training to do everything, and could do everything because she had a terrific technique, she had a great personality, and she was very flexible as an actress, and a lot of personality, a lot of temper. Did you ever meet her?
No, unfortunately not.
I was lucky to work with her a lot, and she was quite something. And I'm going to get back to Christa later regarding you. But Christa Ludwig, I don't want to say she wasn't easy. She was easy with colleagues when you were a professional. If you were not a professional, she could be very difficult. And I attended many of her master classes, and she would become very strict, let's say, with the students, and would scare them because her belief was that if you can't breathe properly, you can't be a singer. And I remember vividly one time we were doing class at Juilliard, and there was a very nervous mezzo-soprano in front of the great Christa Ludwig, and Christa was saying, "You're not breathing." "I am, Madam Ludwig. You are not breathing. Get down on the floor." "What do you mean?" "Get down on the floor." And here was the singer wearing her nice clothing. "Get down on the floor. You're a dog now. You're a dog. Breathe like a dog. Breathe like a cat. Breathe like a cat. Breathe like a dog." And this one was breathing and so on. And finally, it was unlocked. And the breathing worked. "Now get up. Sing." And she sang Dorabella, this woman. And she sang so much better, because Christa Ludwig made her understand that breathing is natural if we don't think about it. And she said, "Your dog does not think about it breathing, he just breathes. Your cat does not think about breathing, she just breathes. This is what you have to do." And she scared this poor young mezzo-soprano into doing the right thing. So that's what I mean, that she came from an era and from a background in which nothing was given to anyone. It was wartime. Germany had been vanquished in World War II. She lived in Austria. She then married one singer and then another, married a Frenchman and lived in France. She loved New York City. She had a great working relationship with Leonard Bernstein, and he would hire her just for everything, including a symphony I'll talk about later. Um, she had a great working relationship with Herbert von Karajan, or as good as it could be. Um, all the great conductors, James Levine especially, wanted to work with her. They did a Winterreise by Schubert, a song cycle, usually sung by men. The greatest Winterreise I ever heard was Christa Ludwig playing with James Levine. So you have that. And you have that because you are not being pigeonholed into this little repertory of Italian bel canto. Because Christa Ludwig and you and very few other people, Tatiana Troyanos was another, could go from Kundry or Venus in Tannhäuser to Dorabella in Così fan tutte, which is something almost no one can do. You do that. And I'm wondering whether you pursue that, whether enough conductors ask you for different things that it's just happened. Because another way of putting it is you swim in deep operatic waters. Handel and Mozart is nice swimming, but Wagner is a lot of swimming, and a lot of Verdi, dramatic Verdi is the same kind of swimming.
Mhm.
How did you wind up singing this great variety of roles at a young age?
Well, honestly, when you are a young singer, you take what they give you, unless it's dangerous. So I started kind of with Don Carlo Tristan, Don Carlo Tristan, Don Carlo Tristan, this sort of mixture. Mostly, sometimes.
Which are
Yeah.
two of the heaviest, most challenging roles, and you were in your 20s?
Yes, my first Don Carlo was 2007.
Oh.
No, so first was Tristan then, because first Tristan was 2005. Yes, I was 25, first Tristan, and first big role I've ever done. But I've always been, and still am, I'm doing things with my voice. I'm not trying to be bigger than I am. And I always suggest at first musical rehearsals to the conductor that I'm going to do what I'm able to do. And I cannot be anybody else or be a heavier, bigger, darker voice or anything. So if you don't like it, I will not sing it, because otherwise, safety first. So that's how.
Mm-hmm.
That's how always. And I believe that even the most dramatic, commonly known dramatic repertoire can always benefit from a lighter voice that is able to do more nuance and more colors and more little things that bigger voices just by nature are unable to do. So it's all a question of taste. But I would only do it if I'm safe, if I don't have to fight the heavy orchestra. Voilà.
Julian, I'm going to ask you to play number 9. This is audio only. And because I want you to hear how Ekaterina sings music that people think is heavy in a way that sounds like beautiful Italian bel canto. So number 9. You'll love it. So that sounds Italian to me, in terms of its flavor, in terms of its lush romanticism. It does not sound like the stereotypical heavy Wagner. And that's because Wagner, whatever we can say about him, loves only two great composers, Richard Wagner and Vincenzo Bellini. Bellini, according to Wagner, had beautiful lyricism, long, flowing, romantic lines. And when you hear Bellini, Wagner knew that music, and he tried successfully, I think, to create a Wagnerian version of Bellini, which is why we will now, if Julian, if you would set up number 2, this is not from the current Norma, but from the Norma that you did in Barcelona with Sandra Radvanovsky, who sang Norma with this production a few years ago in New York. What I want to ask you after, Ekaterina, is the conductor for that was Renato Palumbo.
I think
And
so, yes.
Renato Palumbo, and I want you all to listen, conducts in a very different way from, for example, Maurizio Beni conducting at the Met. And I'm not saying one is better or worse, but with Belcanto, I was chatting the other day with the conductor, Nicola Luisotti. He said that Bellini often put a blank page in front of the conductor that the conductor and the singers have to fill in with many choices. And I'm not for one or the other, but I have heard the opera Norma, and especially the duet with Adalgisa, sung in so many different ways as conducted by different conductors and as sung by two different singers. Sometimes Adalgisa is a soprano, sometimes she's a mezzo, sometimes there's this thing in German called Zwischenfach, which means a Fach is your natural repertory, and Zwischen means you're between two, which is why I suggested that you could sing Leonora and Fidelio, because that's sung by mezzos and by sopranos.
I am Zwischenfach for sure.
You are
Yes,
Zwischenfach,
yes.
which is not easy to say. Let's all say it together. Zwischenfach. You can get in trouble saying that word. But anyway, Julian, if you would play number 2, which is something we can watch, and you can watch if you'd like.
Oh, it's
We'll move our chair.
2015.
Yeah, 2015 Barcelona. And if you want to move your chair, you can sit whatever you want. I'm going to sit and watch. No, that don't.
Vado al campo
brisk tempo at the end. Julian, set up number 3, please. Because this whole opera, but especially that scene with Norma Adolgiza, really is different every time we hear it and every time two people sing it, even if you've sung it with Sandra many times or Sonia Yancheva several times. It's different. Now, this season, because I love the opera Norma, I love Ekaterina, I went twice, and I would go again. The first time I went, Sonia Yancheva was Norma. And the second time I went, which was Friday night, at the last minute, or pretty soon to the last minute, it seems that Sonia Yancheva had to cancel, and they brought in Angela Mead, who had sung in this production before. She was in Las Vegas, I gather. I don't know what she was doing in Las Vegas, because what plays in Vegas stays in Vegas. But she brought in. I don't imagine you had time for much rehearsal.
Not at all.
Had you ever sung with Angela Mead before?
Yes,
you
yes.
did, okay.
When I found out that she was the replacement, I was calm.
Yeah, okay.
Because we did Verdi Requiem together, and it was so beautiful to sing with her. And also, we did something else together. Oh, yes, Bolena.
Anna Boleyn, of course, here at the Met. But Norma is just different. And because although Angela knew the production, it had been a few years, and she just came off a plane, when you have to sing something that you've sung with other artists, at least with Radvanovsky and Sonia Yancheva, suddenly with Angela Mead, even if you know her, when it's so complicated, how do you figure out how you're going to sing that together, which is basically two voices as one voice?
Well, the first thing I did, I went online and looked for a recording of her doing it with some other mezzo. I found a couple of things. I noted the cadenzas, how she did it, because surely it would be difficult for her to come and adjust to what me and Sonia were doing. So I did that. And then when I arrived, she was surprisingly so relaxed. I mean, she's a great gal. She just...
And she's been in that chair.
Oh, yeah?
Sandra's been in that chair. Morella Frainie's been in that chair. Christa Ludwig, unfortunately not, but everyone else.
But anyway, we did take 5 minutes on these cadenzas together. And but anyway, when we were there on stage, it seemed like we didn't have to, because it just worked immediately. It was a joy. It was spontaneous joy. It was a similar thing that happened in Munich once when we had Polione flown in. Greg
Norma.
Kundry came,
Yeah.
And he just, with no rehearsals, bang, the whole production,
Whoop.
bang, just blew up, you know.
Yep. By the way, Gregory Kundi will be in this chair on May 15th, the great tenor. I must say, the audience on Friday night went absolutely wild. It was like being back with Maria Callas and Giulietta Simeonato. It was just an ovation that was thunderous. Did you feel that from the? Did you feel the audience on the stage?
Yes.
It was just a very particular, wonderful night at the opera. There are many wonderful nights at the opera, but sometimes when things happen that are unexpected, the audience is there to support the singers. The singers are there, basically flying without a parachute, and the conductor has to be very responsive. And I will say that Maurizio Benini, in my experience, conducted very differently on Friday night than he did when he conducted you and Sonia Yancheva. Not better, worse, just differently. And the opera sounded entirely different to me on Friday night because of his conducting and the way he expressed and told the story with the orchestra, with the singers and so on. And that's why I asked you about Renato Palumbo before, because the conducting that you had in Barcelona, parts of it were very slow and luxurious. And then suddenly the tempi take off like you're running a race.
Yes, yes.
And so I think I've answered my own question, but I want you to talk about it more. Your musical preparation as a choral conductor, as someone who reads the entire score, enables you more than many singers I know to immerse into the deep end, as I keep calling it, because you went and you looked at how Angela Mead has sung it with other mezzos. Whereas Believe me, most singers don't do that. They just don't. They show up, they say, okay, maestro, help me, please. But you come with a level of preparation that I find in all of your music making, which is why I love your music making, to put very simply. Where did you learn this? How did this happen that you acquired this different way of approaching the music than most singers?
I think it all began with my very first piano teacher when I think I was 5.5 when my mom discovered that I had a good ear. And she took me to this very, very good old teacher. And she taught me the utmost respect for the music, respect for what's written, for everything that's written. And to the point that I still cannot put a glass of water on the piano, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's sacred. If classical music is playing, I cannot chew, I cannot read, I cannot do anything. I sit. This is how. So I have this extreme reverence towards the music and towards classical music, and so I do whatever possible, whatever is in my power to do the justice to the score. So that includes everything.
So when you, part of what we're going to get into now, we're good on time, is you also sing a lot in concert, but you do opera in concert or operatic selections in concert. And again, something that I've always noticed with you is the degree to which you bring the theater to the concert stage, which not everyone does. And it's not just about acting, so to speak. It's about, if I know the works, and I do, I always know what Ekaterina is singing about. It's not just the music. So we're going to see a selection. And if I'm correct, tell me, were you a substitute mezzo-soprano in Baden-Baden?
Yes.
Yes. So
48 hours.
The thing that I find astonishing about this performance with some guy named Jonas Kaufmann is that you stepped in, and you'll see the result, in a very different kind of music that is not Wagnerian. It's a lot more dramatic than Wagner music. So, Julian, if you please, number 3. And I suggest if you want the chair.
Yes, I'll
Yeah.
stay.
And you can just watch. And you'll love it.
Die russische Mezzosopranistin ist ganz kurzfristig für die erkrankte
I learned it
Elina
24 hours before.
Freuen Sie sich auf eines der leidenschaftlichsten Opernduette aller Zeiten.
Oh, qui Santuzza, qui t'aspettavo, e Pasqua in chiesa non fai. Mamma, debbo parlarti. Mamma cercava. Debbo parlarti. Qui no, qui no.
Dove sei stato?
Che vuoi tu dire a Francofonte?
Oh, non è vero!
Santuzza, credimi! Santuzza, credimi!
Dove dire? Ti vidi volgere giù dal sentier. E stamattina all'alba hanno scorto presso l'uscio di loro.
Ah, m'hai spiato!
Oh, vedo giù, hanno raccontato, compare il fiol marito poco fa.
Quasi ricambi l'amor che ti porto. Poi che m'uccidi. Lasciami dunque, lasciami, il vantenteggio per il giusto segno con la tua pietà.
Amore dunque,
No,
assai più bella è lui.
baci non lavo.
It's a bit of a torture to look at this, really. I had so little time for preparation, and I'm a preparation freak, so I had to dare. This all is just a dare, total dare. I didn't sing the role. I didn't know the music.
Did
nothing.
you know the character?
A little bit, but not,
Well, for example, you communicated that she was pregnant, which is central to the whole issue of, stay, I'm going. And he understands the obligation why he's wanted to stay, because she's pregnant with his child and they're not married. And this is Sicily. And, but it was all there in the acting in a concert version. And I will point out, with the conductor behind you.
Oh, he is the best.
Marco
for
Armigato,
yes.
who has been in this chair, was terrific. But when you're doing something for the first time and it's new music, you don't have the score, it's a lot of acting. Jonas Kaufmann is
And
next
you have
to
Jonas Kaufmann there.
And he's a great actor and singer and musician, Jonas Kaufmann as well. But there's a lot of pressure on you.
Yes,
A lot. And so how did that experience evolve? And I'm just going to say, Julian, you're going to play number 6 and then number 7 together when we do that. Don Carlo. No secrets here. Don Carlo. But talk about how you make that happen. A colleague was indisposed. You were called in.
Yes, I was on the beach with my husband, and the call came in, and it was supposed to be my, as usual, my only 5 or 6 days of free time at home between things, and I just got to the point, and then. Yes, it was insane. It was insane. I didn't, when I said yes, I just came back from Baden-Baden at that point. I just did Die Walküre there, had a nice success. And,
Fricka?
Yes. And from that point, it was insane. It was insane. I started to print the music from the internet, looking for, tried to see if it's possible actually to memorize all that stuff, because most of the things I've never sung. Thought about the pressure, thought about what to wear. Also, the importance of Baden-Baden Gala, knowing that it will remain, that there will be a DVD, it will remain forever on YouTube, there will be lots of critics, jumping in for Garancia, filling in these big shoes, everything. There's lots of pressure. I don't know. I was younger and more daring, I guess. I don't know if I would have done now something like that. But yes, but sometimes those things, like for example, like Angela jumping in the other night, they just
Angela
take
Mead,
everything to another level, because it makes the art really as live and as raw as it comes.
So you were on an Italian beach with your husband, is that correct?
Yes.
Ekaterina is married to an Italian, and luckily for her and for us and for her husband, lives in Italy. And you live in the Marche, which is a magnificent region, but not where we tend to think of opera stars living. It's kind of out of the way. It's inaccessible in terms of airports. Ancona is really the only airport. Otherwise, you have to go to Rome or Bologna or maybe Florence. Who here has been to the Marche? A few people.
So
Great.
many.
It's
Wow.
it's very beautiful. It's very musical, in that Renata Tebaldi was born there, though she was not marchigiana. Rossini is from there, the Pesaro Festival. Franco Corelli, born there. Lots of great musicians.
Beniamino Gigli.
Beniamino Gigli, who in Porto Recanati, I believe. And Leopardi, the great writer, is from there. It's a small region, 1.2 million, I believe, but it's so rich with culture. The Macerata Musical Festival is there. Pesaro is there. It's really rather extraordinary. And what's typical about the Marche and very interesting is that it was under papal domination for much of its history, unlike, say, parts that were under Austria or France or under Spain. This was papal. And what they did in all the towns in the Marche, let's take Macerata, but there are many, is that they would have three important buildings. They would have the Palazzo Comunale, which would be the city government. They would have the Duomo, the chief church, which would be the religious government. And then in the Marche, they would have a theater. So this was something else. It was not the state, it was not the church, it was the people. And the Marche, a little region, has 76 beautiful opera houses. And so for that reason, when you go there, you can see and hear music in towns of 500 people. Have you sung in any of the little theaters of the Marche?
I have used the little theater in San Ginesio, where we live, to practice, because this was the only big space that they had, and I needed to run some Wagner, so I just went there. But it's so small. It's really like a toy, like a little music box. It's really, really amazing. They have like, I don't know, 10, 15 rows in the stalls, and there will be this wide, like that. But built as a theater with 4 balconies, like that, all these plush red, and it's amazing.
There's no other region like that in all of Italy in terms of the number of opera houses that exist for a small population. So I think we all need to go to the Marche. And you can do sort of a little tour of the Marche theaters as your vacation and go home and sleep in your bed every night. But in the meantime, warm up these theaters with your voice, because a lot of them are not used as much as they could be and should be.
And unfortunately, the one in San Ginesio is after the earthquake is totally closed.
The Marche and Umbria suffered terribly in the recent earthquakes. But you mentioned earlier that among your first 2 roles, believe it or not, were Branghena in Tristan and Isolde and Eboli in Don Carlo.
First big roles.
Big roles. Because when most people with their big roles might have been doing Susanna or Cherubino in Mozart or things like that, you were doing these, what Martina Royal calls the big girl roles. And because Eboli is a big girl, I don't mean physically, but her emotions, her temperament, her power, what's required of her. And I found 2 different performances of basically the same aria plus a little bit more in one of them. One of them, I will tell you, I don't know where it's from. The filming is not very good, so don't look at this as classic video. But it is the confrontation between Elisabetta and I don't know who the Elisabetta is, and Eboli, and then the famous Odon Fatale, in performance of the opera in character, and then you do it in concert. And I want all of you to notice the degree to which the character transitions from the opera performance to the concert, the way we just saw you do, and I didn't know that this was on a moment's notice with Jonas Kaufmann. So therefore, when I said before that Ekaterina brings a lot more theater to concerts than most singers I've seen, this will be a good example of showing you the theater and then showing you the concert. So, if you please, this will be two things.
Which one?
I don't know which one. We'll find out.
il giorno, tu che ci fai, si va dal terra, ti maledico, ti maledico, con mia beltà. Versar, versar, sol piango, serenare, soffrir d'amor. Il merito, che cancellar mai non potrà. Ti maledico, con la bocca, ti maledico, oh mia beltà. Oh mia regina, io ti
So, Julian, sit at number 11, please. I just want to ask you for a couple of minutes the evolution of your Eboli from the St. Petersburg performance, where the photographer will not win any awards, to 4 years later in Baden-Baden.
Yes, yes. In between, I have done many performances in different theaters, and of course that gave me, and also the maturity of the voice, and also something that you can give artistically with experience, one needs to arrive to big girls.
Yeah.
The boys can do things, but that's only one part. So, yep.
So what I want to ask you about now, you participated in a performance, a concert, that is simply one of the greatest nights I've ever had attending a concert. And there's a lot of story behind it. And it was in Verbier in Switzerland. And I was teaching. There's a festival every summer that has a very large musical educational component. And I taught there in 2012, and I believe this was 2019.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we knew we were there. We had never met, but we knew each other through correspondence. And you had had a rough period before that, I think it's fair to say.
Very rough.
What happened that was a rough period? And then we'll talk about how it came out in the concert.
I was supposed to make my debut in Bayreuth with Tannhäuser, the new production, the opening of the festival. Fabulous production, fabulous role, and which the production was basically made around Venus, around my character, and I created that character, and it was going so well, and until I broke my knee on stage in one of the last rehearsals. So, big lesson in life, let go. And I let it go, and then this was the first concert after my cancellation of Bayreuth,
And you were wearing
I was
a
barely
brace.
walking.
You were
Yes, a
barely
big brace.
walking.
I was barely walking. I was constantly in pain, and we did this trip in a car with my husband all the way from San Ginesio to Verbier.
Into the Alps, to the high French Alps.
With ice and painkiller, and on the back
And-
seat of the car. It was really.
And this was Mahler's Second Symphony, The Resurrection. And the mezzo-soprano has a crucial role in that symphony, singing a song, an aria, about belief and about faith. And the soprano also has a beautiful, smaller role, but important. It was the South African soprano Golda Schultz, who I do not know personally, but I love her work. If you see her, tell her I wanted to be
I
here.
will.
Yeah, please do. Because I really love her work, too. And one of my favorite conductors was conducting, and he's been in the chair, Fabio Luisi. If you remember my night with Fabio Luisi is the most serene, cool,
Most un-Italian of conductors,
most
right?
un-Italian conductors. He is very, very, he's spiritual, he's meditative. He doesn't jump around. He doesn't bring that Italian fervor that we think we're used to. But there were very particular pressures for this night because it was the closing of the festival. There is a youth orchestra that the conductor in residence, in this case Fabio Luisi, works with and trains them as an orchestra and forms them. And then they do a big work. They may do an opera and then a concert, but not the Mahler Second, which is something incredibly ambitious. And I learned the Mahler Second from Leonard Bernstein and Christa Ludwig. And this brings me back to that. I was able to work with them in 1987 when they did a series of historic broadcasts that were done at what was then called Avery Fisher Hall. There was a recording of that. And Bernstein taught me and anyone who was in his circle at that time this magnificent symphony that is really one of the greatest works of all music. And frankly, a lot rests on the conductor's shoulders, on the chorus, on the orchestra, but especially the mezzo, because she's the one who has to come out and focus the audience, focus everyone on what the symphony means. And it's maybe 5 minutes long, but it's just, your mouth hangs open when it's done right, and it was done right. But I knew what you were going through, and I knew what happened in Bayreuth, and I knew that you had this leg all bandaged up, and we texted a little before, and I was at the performance, and not everyone knew what happened to you. The orchestra certainly did. The chorus did. Golda Schultz was a fantastically supportive colleague that
Yes,
night, and I noted that. Fabio Luisi, normally the cool cucumber, was a hot tamale that night. And it was a whole other experience of Fabio Luisi, as you will see. And the degree of passion and engagement that he brought to this, he's always a wonderful conductor, but it made such an extraordinary difference because the stakes were raised kind of like these other nights that you described, in which you jumped in and sang with Jonas Kaufmann. Angela Mee jumped in and you had to form a new performance. And this is part of the excitement of opera and classical music, but only when the people are up to the task. Otherwise, you feel bad for them. But in this case, let's watch it, and then you'll tell us what you were feeling. We can see it on your face. And I mean, I can tell you, the entire audience cried, the entire orchestra cried. Fabio Luisi maybe shed a tear. It was just an unforgettable night, and ranks in my 5 top nights of musical performances in my life. So really, I mean it. So let's watch a little of it with Fabio Luisi.
Yes, this music is everything.
Is extraordinary. What were you on that night, given what you had gone through, thinking and feeling at that moment?
Well, at that moment, I was still very much going through, because this was, I think, about just 10 days after operation. So I was really in pain and trying to not to lose the balance, and that final was probably the only moment that took me away from everything for a moment, because to listen to it from the audience is one thing, but to be inside
Yeah.
this music when you are standing in the middle of the orchestra is an absolutely surreal experience. Is really, it's taking you somewhere. When afterwards you think, oh my God, this is my job. This is what I do for a living. Am I getting paid for this? It's really, it's incredible. It's incredible.
But I remember even the curtain calls that I wanted you to have a lot of curtain calls. They wanted you to have a lot of curtain calls. You couldn't walk.
I was wearing some Skechers
Yeah.
yeah, and one kept coming off, and it was a disaster. It was a
And
disaster.
Goldie Schultz was very
She was
supportive and
there for
helping
me.
you. And
Yes.
but it was, there was drama beyond the music, and yet you sang beautifully. And how did that happen? Obviously, we know why you sing beautifully, but given the circumstances, given that you had surgery 10 days before, given that you drove all the way from the Marche, you were all the way up in the Alps where the air is thin, and that's, believe me, a factor up in Verbier. When I've worked there, I work with singers, and I can't be Christa Ludwig and say breathe, because you can't up in the Alps. And so there were all these things happening. And yet, it not only came together, I mean, Fabio Luisi, you'll never see him that wet again. The degree that he poured into his passion, his wanting to be supportive of you, we were all with you that night, basically. And all in our own ways. Not every audience member knew, but when they saw you struggle to come out on the stage, they knew something was, I was going to say afoot, but something was something was going on. Looking back on that night, what do you remember as an artist? I mean, I knew you spoke about the music itself, and yes, you get paid to be surrounded by that, but just the logistics of having to be there for 90 minutes on the stage and in pain. And a lot of physical pain, maybe emotional pain, I don't know, but physical pain I knew.
It was certainly a positive experience, because I was able to, first of all, even before I came to that concert was for me like a beacon of hope, because I knew that I'm not going to cancel this concert, and I had to keep my voice in shape for that concert. So immediately, almost immediately after the operation, I started to sing again, and for this piece you have to be in an absolute top shape, believe it or not. I would say for me it's easier to do O Don Fatale from Don Carlo than this. This is the ultimate, what's it called, pizzo.
Fabric, thread,
Pizzo. Lace.
lace.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's thinnest lace,
lace.
possible, and it's so exposed. So everything has to be there, and you are the one who dares to put in words what the music around you was saying before and will say after. This is so, and me being a perfectionist and over preparationist, it's a mountain. So it kept me going, really. Preparation, having this concert in mind, and Verbier is an important place.
Yeah.
So really, it kept me up, and it gave me hope. And when I was there, I thought, this is what I'm doing, and it is happening, and I managed, and here I am, and it was just all over positive experience.
And how did you feel after?
Relieved.
Yeah, okay. No, I asked because a number of years ago, Carol Vaness was singing at the Met, magnificent soprano, and she had a leg injury as well.
Oh, yeah.
And she insisted on singing, and we put her in a stage in costume. It was, I believe, La Clemenza di Tito, maybe a Domeneo. And another artist came out and basically mimed the role, because her cover didn't have any voice that night. So Carol Vaness sang, and she was fantastic even seated with her leg in a cast and so on. But after, she told me she was deeply depressed, because the whole thing just sort of, the reality of her, what happened to her, kicked in, no pun intended, and really not. And then she went home and she was home alone. You had your husband.
I was with my husband.
Yeah.
Who's the best husband in the world, and
Good.
I cannot be unhappy until I have him. So it's I was relieved. I was super happy,
Yeah.
and yes, no, but this injury really taught me a lot. So I try to everything bad that happens. I try to take it as a lesson, as something to improve, and then since then I let go much easier. The material stuff, the things, and so that was good. I was learning.
This is why when we watched the first video, I said, "Be careful of the steps over there."
Oh yes. Now I'm so careful
You
when I
have to
come
be.
to rehearse a production.
be.
I'm looking everywhere. What my shoes are going to be like? Where are the
Because
steps?
many opera productions, especially in Germany, are kind of dangerous and daring and so on, and they don't realize that opera singers have a lot to do just to do their singing, not to mention, hanging from parachutes and who knows what else they're sometimes asked to do. But it's a consideration in opera, and that's why some of what I showed tonight was you in concert singing opera music, because I wanted people to experience Ekaterina purely musically in addition to the theatrical elements. I think that many of you have gotten to know an artist that I've admired a lot, as you can tell. And Ekaterina, thank you for coming here tonight.
Thank you. It's been
And
fun.
we look forward. You're in Tannhäuser. Well, you're in Norma as Adalgisa, and then you're in Tannhäuser in
Next
November and
season.
December at the
Yes.
Met. And I know future stuff as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Einfach.